So those of you who heard the teaser knew that this was coming, but here we are, starting for real. This is episode 1. We are going to just do a little. This is actually going to be a 2-part episode. We're going to do 2 posts, just kind of giving you the ground rules, not ground rules, but the basics of who we are, the show's about, what's going on here. And after those, we'll start diving into the heavier topics. But we thought you might want to get a good background before that happens.
All right, and then just some administrative stuff, I guess you can say. We just as a general rule of thumb for us, we definitely invite challenges, questions, criticism on the content, and for that matter, on the actual production as well. Any tips on production, we would definitely be more than open to. So, to get at us, we've got a couple different ways you can do that. We've got our Facebook, which is AweReallyPodcast. Our Twitter is at AweReallyDudes. That's plural, at AweReallyDudes. And then we also have a Gmail. That's AweReallyPodcast@gmail.com.
And that's AWE.
Good,
REALLY.
Good call. Thank you. Good, thank you. And then finally, we have our SoundCloud, which is just simply AweReally.
For now, that'll probably be the best way to get at us.
Yeah,
I think as we finish up this episode, we're gonna try and get ourselves onto iTunes and get into that whole thing.
So definitely keep an eye out on iTunes for us, for sure.
Yeah.
Gonna definitely try to keep this as a monthly thing.
Oh yeah, every month.
Yeah.
I think as a listener, there really is just a lot of philosophically, where are we coming from? So whatever we say going on from here has to have, because we can't if we're talking about something, we can't stop every second just to explain, oh, by the way, I think this.
Yeah.
There has to be some level of understanding before we dive into anything at all. So I think that's basically where it starts. I mean, all right. A good point is, why did we want to do this? Why are we doing this?
Honestly, what I want to get out of it is just to make people think about this stuff more. It's all right to speculate, and it's okay to question things and not just go along with something because that's what you've believed your whole life, or we talked about indoctrination before. For me,
not only that, I think it's important, and I think part of what I want to do is articulate why it's important to care about what it is that you think. Why care enough to question if it's working for you? And a lot of people, their religion, their Christianity, their view about, could be anything, your view about racism, your whatever.
It ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. So there is a question of, why is it important to care about these things in general? There's a question, why is it important to question things and to be skeptical? Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. That's another good one, is to, I'd like to kind of get out the message of why skepticism is so important, and perhaps by highlighting some of the things or some of the ways we're fooled by advertising, by religion, by whatever, and some of the just general advantages. It'll become obvious to those who, not obvious in a sense that it will be scientifically obvious, but to those who are convinced, it will become, the point will be made, I think.
Yeah, it'll become apparent, yeah.
I mean, eventually, I would like to write a book. I have been kind of looking for that next direction. I did psychology as an undergrad. Took a little time off, and then I went to pursue substance abuse counseling. But that didn't. It wasn't for me, and so I've been searching for the next thing to do. So that this was, if nothing else, a thing to do.
Yeah. Just from a strictly recreational standpoint, yeah.
So that, I mean, that, but as to why this particularly, yeah, definitely. I mean, because if I were to sit and say I'm going to write a book today, I don't know what I would write a book on. I don't think I have a good enough grasp on anything in particular to write a book on it. I think I have a lot of knowledge in general, and I have a good curiosity.
Okay, so you were saying about, you want to write a book someday, and this could be like a good, not necessarily
I think we'll
a platform,
bring up a lot of
but
topics, and in future shows, as we have a bit more of a focused objective, it's going to lead to a lot of reading and research on things that I wouldn't otherwise do. And in that process, I think I'll find because I know I have the passion, I know I have the ability if I were to figure out what. But I think if I were to find the focus, then that would be my next move, is to just do that. And we look up to people like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and these people who kind of make their living just doing what they do and saying what they think and so not in a Kardashian way,
right? Yeah,
but with purpose.
Yeah, and I think I don't know why. I don't think people. I was gonna say I don't know why people are scared of that, but I don't think it's necessarily scared of it. But it's different thinking. So anytime somebody hears something different, it's just shields up, guards up. So I kind of want to use this as a platform to say, no, it's all right to say, why, and don't put your guard up, or if somebody challenges you with why or something like that. I always think about me and my mom talking, and she just right away gets defensive, and I'll just go strictly to religion just for the point. She automatically gets so defensive if I ask her anything about her religion or question anything about her religion, and it's just you don't have to get so defensive. I'm just honestly asking. So I think this is a good way to encourage people to it's all right to question and ask why. Just because you grew up one way doesn't mean you have to keep growing that way. And personally, just the two of us can personally attest to that because we were both brought up religious, and it's definitely kind of going out the window.
You were brought up in the
Roman Catholic
Church.
Yep,
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
So that brings up a good point that I wanted to bring up about morality. A lot of believers and non-believers. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, no, I guess not believers, but a lot of believers say that religion is, usually they're talking about their own religion, although it applies to all religions, or any religion, I should say, that it's their source of morality. If you don't believe in God or without the Bible, where do you get your morals from? As if without God we would go out and murder our neighbor tomorrow. A closer, not even much closer, but a closer inspection, nobody gets their morals from the Bible. I mean, you don't have to go very far into Deuteronomy or Leviticus to find some of the most horrible things that you could ever imagine. Yeah. Then you understand before when we were referencing child abuse. I mean, if you're not familiar with what is in the Bible, it is horrible. It is worse than any horror movie you've ever seen, and you're not going to show The Ring or the Saw movies to a 5-year-old right after they come out of Sunday school. Anyway, so we definitely don't get our morals from the Bible, but most apologists and most moderates, they don't take the Bible at its word. They don't take it literally.
Yeah. In which I don't think they should get away with either.
I don't.
Just as an aside.
Yeah, and I mean, they shouldn't get away with it because that is, pretty much exactly my point is that, like you said, they pick and choose.
Yeah.
They cherry pick which parts they like and which parts they don't like, and depending on who you talk to and what religion you're talking about. The Bible says that the punishment for adultery is to be stoned to death.
Right.
But I don't think anybody who considers themselves and is considered by others to be sane actually holds that belief in this country.
I guess not.
So they pick and choose what they want. And my question is, by what standard do they choose which scriptures they like, or which passages they like, or the values or customs that they continue or support or detest? I mean, if we admit that there is some way, there's some standard by which to determine these things, what's good and bad in the Bible, then why bring the Bible into it at all? We've proven that there's a standard of morality outside of religion and outside of the Bible and outside of the Quran and outside of all of the other mythical pieces of garbage fantasies that are out there. They don't...
Texts.
They don't... That's not... That's not where we get our morals from. So, you say you hope to make people think.
Yeah.
About what? And what, I mean...
Well, specifically, there's things like religion, and we actually just talked about it last week, free will, the illusion of free will. So specifically, those are two really big things for me. And just religion and the illusion of free will are two really big specific things I wish more people cared to think about, is the way I should put it. There's such an apathy towards this. I don't want to make it sound smug and say, higher knowledge, but, it kind of is, though, because it's not the general masses' knowledge. It's available to them, but they're not making it available to themselves, and I kind of want to encourage that. Make that information available to you.
That's the other thing, is that it's there. It's not asking anybody to do anything that, yes, we're asking you to think. We're asking you to give up everything you believe and everything you based your entire life on. So yes, we're asking you a lot there. But it's not like you have to go learn physics in order to understand why religion is wrong, or to come to the consensus that we'd be better off without it. And it's there's this idea that it is hard, that it's complicated, and it's not. It's heavy, and I can relate to somebody who simply just does not want to be bothered. Yeah. And, I guess I can sympathize as far as there's things that I just don't want to do and that maybe I should care about and that I don't care about. But
there's a difference, though, because there's so many things that are less important, as I hold up my quote fingers here, less important than other things. So, you said there are people who just don't care. My brother would be a perfect example of that. He just couldn't care any less about, religion, politics, stuff like that. And it's a shame. I wish he did care. But then again, if it's not affecting him, it's tough.
And firstly, it is affecting him. He doesn't realize it.
Right,
so,
right.
It's whether or not he realizes it. But it's also...
So realize it. Sorry, go ahead.
But it's also... I think you said it. There's just certain things that are more important than other things. You could say, oh, you don't care about football?
That's kind of where I was going.
How do you not care about football?
Yeah.
I get that, too. But, alright, if you don't care about football, whatever. Yeah. If you don't, to say that you don't care about morality, to say that you don't care about the validity of something that you're claiming. That's the other thing. There are a lot of people who just don't care about where the universe came from. They don't care about being good. And to those people, there's a different conversation and philosophically, I'm not saying that my brother's not somebody who cares about people's well-being. He certainly is. But I'm just saying there's certain things that, just technology and social media and things. They are important things. It's almost, it's hard to say undeniable because he does deny it. But I mean things like when we talk about technology or social media in particular, he just doesn't accept anything I have to say, whether or not I'm making valid points. He just at the end of the day doesn't agree with me, and so.
But is he presenting the opposite or not? Is
no,
it, or is it's just
no?
You're wrong.
Just like, I don't care.
Okay.
No, I don't care.
Okay.
It'll be well, because. But his argument is that it's unimportant.
Oh, see
so
that's
that there's nothing important about it.
Yeah.
So it's not. So I mean, all my long-winded things about the interconnectedness of human ideas and the precipice of human knowledge being available at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. So I mean. And it's like you could make that argument here about. So what about morality? So what about the universe? So what? And I mean, I guess that's a tough pill for me to swallow. But at the end of the day, if you really want to make those claims, then I will shut up. Because if you really just do not care about people, you don't care about society, you don't. All these things are fundamental. They're so fundamental that it's that you can't care about other things without caring about these first. That to care about another thing, you must care about this. It's that that's what fundamental means.
Yeah. Well, that's something too that I've contemplated just on my own, like the origins of morality. Because my brother, if I said to him, do you think it would be bad for person X to kill person Y? He's going to say, yeah, it's wrong. They shouldn't be murdered. But if I said to him, where do you get that moral basis? Why do you think that's wrong? Mm-hmm. He probably has no...
Oh, absolutely he has no clue. Absolutely
he has no idea where that moral basis is coming from.
It's because he's already answered the question with the Bible and stopped thinking.
Yeah.
And stopped thinking.
And I mean, my brother was brought up the same way I was brought up in terms of the same church and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's funny that I become the atheist, but my brother is still just like an I don't care, because at the time I was into it when I was into it, and I think you said the same thing. Yeah. You were into it when we were speaking of Catholicism. We were into it, but my brother was apathetic even when we were younger. And
it makes sense that he would continue to be apathetic in general.
Yeah, but then that's where I ask, where does his moral basis come from then? So we don't need the religion for moral basis.
I expect neither of our brothers to listen to this.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Because it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another thing too. If you just do not care about people, you don't care about your own ultimate happiness beyond just your conscious experience, just whatever you see and think, if that's all, that's, I mean, cheers to, kudos, because I think the most of us, which, I mean, obviously, if you look at how many religious people there are, people do care. And there are people who simply don't care, but in general, people do care. And they simply just have the wrong answers. They're just misinformed. And to a very high degree.
It's our generation, I feel like, that is starting this whole, it's okay. Well, no, I can't say starting, because, we obviously get a lot of influence from those that are already much older than us established, but I feel like our generation could really get the masses rolling.
I mean, it's the internet generation.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because religion in particular,
any
kind of deception is based on information.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be deceived if you have all the information.
Right, yeah.
So we can call religion the big deception.
yeah, right.
That is the ultimate. But in any case of deception, it's about restricting information. If you have more information than the other people or the other person, then you are in power, and that is how you maintain the upper hand. Mm-hmm. Is to create an avenue or a cyclical thing for when people start looking for the answers, they get caught in this cycle, this circle of non-information that is religion, and they never get the information. Like you said with your brother, he has the answers and he stops thinking. Well, I mean that's the one case, but or you have the complete opposite case in religion where there's, your sophisticated theologians who spend their entire lives finding ways to circumnavigate reality in order to fit their story to the evidence that we have. Because, I think it's important to, I think it goes without saying, but it's also important that it is said, in case it doesn't go without saying, that science is not an answer to anything. Science is a process, and it is fueled by the evidence that we can take from the whole of reality. So we have part of the picture, and we fill in the blank. And it's just how many of the pieces do we have? With certain things, there's just so many of the pieces that we do have, and so little that we don't have, that we call it a fact or a theory. Which is, kind of, people will misinterpret the word theory.
Say people abuse that word, boys. Oh my god.
It's just a theory.
Just a theory, yep.
You obviously don't know what a theory is.
Exactly, yeah. So frustrating, man. And those are the things that I guess I want to get out of this. Yeah. There we go. That's why you need to ask, and you need to speculate, and you need to question.
Science Science goes on the pieces that we have to create our best understanding, our best interpretation of what the larger picture is. So the fact that science doesn't have answers for this, that, and the other means nothing. It just means that it literally means nothing.
And that's where religion becomes an excuse, and it fills in those holes, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay. That's one point.
To be specific, I should. Yeah.
One point is to accept ignorance, to accept the fact that we just don't know everything. You just don't know some things, and making up an answer doesn't mean you know it. But it's also that just because there is an answer in one and there isn't an answer in another, also doesn't, equate the two to what that sounds like. It's like, one has an answer and one doesn't know, then you go with the... It doesn't work like that.
It's just one or the other.
Yeah, because it's about the process of evidence and the importance of using evidence, or in the case of morality, it's rational thinking, which is evidence of a different type. We have physical evidence, which leads to ultimate questions. And then, like we said, we don't have an axiomatic true moral north and true moral south. There is no ultimate good and bad. And so thus, there's no punishment for acting immorally except for a less moral world. And if we agree that a less moral world is one with greater suffering, then we need not to have an ultimate in order to have directionality of whether this is more moral or less moral. We can just use the scale of suffering. If we come up with a better scale, which we shouldn't need, or if we improve that scale as we've done, then that should suffice. Whether or not we are doing good or doing evil shouldn't matter as long as we are promoting well-being and avoiding suffering. Those are as true of a north and south as you need, and they can still be controversial issues. Which, we can still have controversial issues, which we do, and it doesn't negate the fact that there is an ultimate answer. It's just subjectivity plays a role, and the importance of the individual versus the lot is then, because we're not talking about, we can go into this way further in morality, because
we could.
Free will. I was going to say, because we definitely have to dedicate an entire episode very soon, if not the very next episode, to free will.
Yeah.
But people who start in this down this road of, well, if there's no true moral north, then and it's just about well-being, then why don't we just kill all the depressed people? Yeah. Well, obviously, number one, that's not well-being for those people, and that wouldn't be the well-being for humanity at large either. So it's just a basic. It doesn't mean that because you have these rhetoric answers that that they hold any water. Like that's just fancy nothingness. It's just nice sounding nothingness. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't apply because that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about killing people. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid. Yeah. I mean, I don't even understand how that's an argument against atheism, because that's to say, oh, so then if we have religion as morality, then entire groups of people won't be killed? I mean, what are you... You know what I mean? I mean, what's the argument that you're making here? That it doesn't matter that people will be killed in large groups either way, but one is true and one is not? And fine, and if that's the argument you want to make, I'll still be an atheist. Yeah. But again, that's not the argument. Again,
then it becomes about religion becoming an excuse for the killings, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially Islam specifically, you know, so not only does religion not create that moral basis or moral origin, nor moral north and south, whatever you want to say, it even perverts that moral north and south in some cases, and that's such a shame that so many people can believe something that just negates what could become a moral north and south.
And it's the backwards thinking of what is good and bad despite what is suffering and well-being. Like, well, why do you need good and bad if people are suffering when you do good and there's well-being if you do bad? Then good and bad are useless in that world.
Right. I guess that's when it becomes more personal, and for me, like, the moral basis just is it good for, I think the word is utilitarianism, like, is it good for all?
Yes.
Yeah, like the universal.
And that's the argument that, you know, the rebuttal that people will come back with and say, okay, so we'll just kill all the depressed people and everybody in the world will be, the world will be a better place. The world will be a happier place. There'll be less suffering in the world. Like, that's
weird because I don't get that at all. Being from that belief or idea, I would never think that would be a good idea, and it would help in any way, you know. So exactly. I don't know where that argument comes from.
I think you have to be a religious person to even think that way in the first place.
I don't get that at all.
It doesn't follow, and it just comes from a belief in an afterlife.
An indoctrinated belief, for that matter.
I mean, if you believe that there's an ultimate paradise and a place of ultimate suffering after this world, then it does change the conversation, because then we can talk about well-being and suffering in those terms. But it still brings us back to the evidence. Because based on the well-being and suffering argument, you can say, okay, maybe these people are suffering on Earth, but in the grand scheme, that's a temporary
pain, transient pain, I guess.
Maybe 100 years max compared to an eternity, and if with the existence of that afterlife as a heaven and hell, then I'm right there with you.
But I need the evidence for it.
But I mean, that's a big if.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't exactly. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. I don't know how more else to highlight where the evidence comes from, or the value of evidence comes from, because it's the uncertain. It's what is unproven that is the deciding factor. It's if we had proof of heaven and hell and we weren't sure if you got 72 virgins or 75 virgins, then it wouldn't really have a grand effect on my behavior. I would be down for the 72 or the 75. But if we're talking about whether or not the place exists at all and whether there is anything to be experienced to forego this life in lieu of, that's a big if, and I don't understand how, and I mean I do understand through indoctrination, but I don't understand, in the light of true, rational, and intellectual honesty, you can accept that, and you can't. That's the thing.
You can't. No.
And so that's, I mean, we need to have intellectual honesty. I mean, it's.
I think that's a really, really good phrase, intellectual honesty. And I think we called it intellectual integrity when we were talking about, the show itself. That's paramount. It's absolutely paramount, but it's only paramount to certain people.
It is, and but in the same right that it's. I hate to keep using the word axiomatic because I got that directly from one of these posts. But I really don't know another word other than fundamental. Like, it's just a fundamental... Like, you could ask why forever, but there has to be a first motion. And, like...
Right.
Because it just is. I mean, suffering is bad because it is suffering. It just is. Well-being is just... better than suffering because of the nature of what we're talking about. And intellectual honesty, it stands on its own. I don't know how to further reduce why it's important to be honest in dealing with the reality of the world. It's hard for me, I mean, obviously it wasn't always the case, but it's hard for me now to even think of what else people could hold as a rational belief.
I haven't heard anything yet, that's for darn sure.
Because, I mean, not everybody who is moral and just a good person has to be an atheist.
Right.
Not everyone who is moral has to be as skeptical, even if they are or are not an atheist. I mean, you don't have to be like... It's not like we're saying that you have to be like us.
Yeah, no. Not preaching.
But if you have intellectual honesty, if you care about morality, you'll be sent in the right direction.
Yeah, you'll be at least put on the path to that higher knowledge I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think if you care, but you're susceptible to being deceived, then humanity itself is susceptible to being separated into these distinct categories of people and of schools of thought. Because the fundamental beliefs are so different and so non-compatible. And I think that brings up the role of the moderate believer. Because before I was trying to think, and again, I think this is something that just, if you inspect the reality of what surrounds the situation, it needs not be further reduced to the fact that being a moderate believer in these organized religions makes you somewhat culpable to whatever the religion does. If it doesn't, and not in the same way that a music group or, as we were saying, even questionably, there is a difference between the allegiance to something like a fraternity and the allegiance to a cult or a religion. There's a difference. It's slight, and it is slight, but it's about infallibility. It's about believing in the supernatural without evidence. That's where it differs, because although you can have things that frat guys were doing in the news, it was not so great. Which, egregious. But certainly not to the level and to the degree, the level of evil, if you want to call it that, and the degree in terms of how many people were affected as religion. And I think it's simply because there's not built into it a fail-safe, or not a fail-safe, but that cyclical thing. Certainly if you have the propensity and the desire to buy into something like a fraternity simply to abuse people, it's certainly there.
Yeah.
But those people are going to exist, whether or not we believe in the supernatural or not, and therefore they are susceptible to things like fraternities and whatever. Which is, I don't support fraternities either. But
and just for the record, I in a fraternity, so trust me, if I don't like anything he's saying, I'll tell him, so I could speak for the Greek side of this.
Maybe so. Yeah, where do you see the line?
Well, you said something about deception and being susceptible to the deception. And it's odd because I joined the fraternity not because of the fraternity's, quote, values or beliefs or mission. I just joined because I thought it was cool and my friends were doing it. So,
but there are people who definitely do join for those reasons.
For mine or the former?
For the
former. Okay, yeah. So
in the same way that they would join a religion.
That's where I was going with that. So It makes me wonder, like, why a fraternity can be very closely related to any specific religion, just on a very much more, acute scale, I guess. For me, I never saw it like that, or I would have never even thought to join it. Or is it the timing? Because I've told you before, it was like sophomore, junior year of college that I was losing my religion, and therefore already in the fraternity.
Yep.
So, like, it makes me wonder, would I have still joined the fraternity, like, now? Like, today, knowing the things I know and believing, I hate using the word believe, but believing the things I believe in, or don't believe in, for that matter. I don't know. I don't know if I would still have joined a fraternity or not.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I would have thought that.
No, I don't.
I thought you would be like, fuck no, I wouldn't do that again.
No, like if I may, I mean, because of course when you're getting rushed and when you're a freshman, there's people that are just like so anti-fraternity that it's almost, it's gratuitous. Like, oh man, you're just gonna be Greek and slap each other's asses and all this other stuff. But like, I guess,
knowing what you know now, if you had, for whatever reason you were in a similar environment, would you now join a similar type of community? Okay,
no, because I've become so impassioned about what I know now. So maybe...
Like what?
Like, for example, we're putting religion versus fraternities just as the example. Like, I don't think I would have joined because of some of the things that I've learned about religion, some of the just terrible things that have either been written in the Bible or people do in the name of religion. If I were to relate any sort of community thing to religion, I'm pretty sure I would be turned off by it by now.
It's just a basic thing that's come along with your skepticism.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
So it's not something, because I'm trying to differentiate the experience of, and I guess it all comes down to truth claims. I really think it does, because to me, if you're in a fraternity, good for you. Go do your own fucking thing. I don't give a shit. That's a stupid waste of time and money, in my opinion. But whatever makes you happy. But I can't say the same about a Christian, and the only real difference is that I'm invoked in your beliefs. You believe that I was created by your God, and thus my beliefs are now part of your beliefs, and that's what's not okay. So maybe if it was so that fraternities, that there was an official affiliation of the school with a single fraternity, and that whether you were actually in the fraternity or not at that school, you had to, there was a certain, you were to appreciate the fact that one fraternity was better than the other fraternities and better than the non-Greeks. Then I think I would have the same problem. But that's the only real difference. And the fact is, I think they're both a stupid waste of time. But because the fraternity doesn't invoke me, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And thus, if you believed whatever you believed about whatever it is, you could believe in the flying spaghetti monster. As long as it doesn't invoke me, and now you're going and voting based on what you think should happen to me or what I should be doing.
Okay, so that's a pretty good distinction. I think that's a pretty damn good distinction. It's the difference is that it's not invoking. That's the perfect distinction.
And as a point of I don't know if I'm using this correctly, but a point of contention. Let's say I wouldn't have a problem with religion existing in that way, as kind of just, in the same way, I guess, that astrology does. And some people really fucking believe in that shit. But there's no invocation of me in that.
Yeah.
you can believe that when I was born says certain things about whatever the fuck it is that you believe. But you don't pull me into it and into what you believe, and therefore it doesn't affect me.
I was going to say, so is it one of those...
The fact that you're wrong, or that you're making shit up, or you're connecting dots that aren't there, is really none of my... It ceases to become any of my business. It really is not my fucking business. And whether you're right or wrong, I have no place in telling you what to believe, what is right, whether you're wrong with that, if you don't ask me. And so this whole idea about respecting beliefs and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think the broader point of how the average moderate is culpable is because now, if we're talking about religion in the way, in this non-intrusive way that we just outlined, radicalism just wouldn't be the problem that it is. I mean, you might still have radicalized people and radicalized communities, but they would be akin probably to an individual cult.
Yeah, there you go. I was
tribe.
trying to think of what it would be.
Just a small group of people who, on that susceptibility, have just been simultaneously deceived by the same thing.
It could be an interesting experiment.
Yeah. This is the propensity to believe, the desire to believe. I don't think that's ever going to leave people, and you may find yourself. You may find yourself in a certain community of people based on what it is that you believe, which may be benign and which may be not. But I think if you're looking for what is, rather than a way to feel based on the story you're told of what is, which is it's a completely different approach to the entire thing. One will bring you in one direction, and one can bring you in a whole slew of other directions. But I don't know, and it's not gonna be this widespread problem of radicalism. That's the big thing. But then if we talk about, which I think could be our next episode. Well, if we don't have religion, if we don't have this awe of God and the Creator and all that happened and then where do we find those spiritual experiences, those higher truths that are proven, not proven, but there's strong evidence for the fact that they exist, simply because, people are religious to begin with.
Yeah.
There's, people who like Michael Shermer, who just have nothing to say about spiritual experience, are definitely missing a piece of the conversation. I definitely respect, again, that if you don't care about that, if you are simply asking what is and what is not, then I can respect that. But I think if you don't acknowledge why you care, because you think there might be a God because you had this amazing experience and you transcended, what you believe to be this world or whatever the case may be, then, and you just completely ignore that, then you're ignoring a big piece of why people are in the conversation. So yeah, it's definitely a fact that people experience things like that, regardless of what way they do. But it's also evidence or proof. I hesitate to say proof, but it's evidence that it can't be religion, because if the Muslim and the Buddhist and the Hindu and the Christian and the Jew are all, and the atheist are all tapping into this level of consciousness or this level of spirituality or whatever you want to call it, it's there and it's pervasive throughout and without all faiths.
Yeah.
So it obviously has nothing to do with what particular beliefs you hold.
Yeah, because I was even going to say, because I guess it kind of depends on what you define as a spiritual experience, but all I was going to say, just based on that, is like, one can make the argument of music giving them the same spiritual experience as somebody who is, devout, having a spiritual experience. Like Bill Maher's religious, however he says it. The miracle guy. The guy who's like, oh, I've seen miracles. I prayed for rain, and it rained, blah, 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 blah. Like, I guess if that's what they consider a spiritual experience...
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because the point is, regardless of what it is, because it could be asking for rain and seeing that it rains. And, in the movie, Bill just he's like, yeah, because sometimes it rains, and which is my point, is ignoring the fact that whether or not, the fact is it rained, and the fact is he had a spiritual experience when it started to rain. His experience of what happened cannot be invalidated. Exactly, it can't be invalidated.
Yeah.
He felt what he felt, but that's a leap to say that I felt these things and therefore it is this God. This particular God.
It's like a retrospective excuse for things that have happened.
It goes along with looking to confirm your own hypotheses, your own biases. Yes, you can say that's evidence for God, but it's if you then have an understanding of neuroscience and say, okay, well then, that's an easily inducible state of mind, state of consciousness, a state of the brain, of whatever. If you put the brain in this state, then you will have these experiences. They just happen to come when you're standing in a giant cathedral singing with these huge ceilings and these loud organ and stained glass windows and 100 people singing these beautiful hymns, and I would think that there's something there too, but it's just not. It just doesn't mean that it's God. It just means that we are capable of feeling amazing things.
Yeah, euphoria, ecstasy.
And again, Jason Silva and Sam Harris both like to use the word awe, which is, brought us to the title of our, it's awe. It's you just that, Jason Silva alludes to the revered gaze, that moment where he talks about whether it's saying the big cathedrals, or now we could say he compares it to the IMAX 3D when you're seeing Interstellar and it's talking about blasting off Earth and leaving everything behind. It's these amazing concepts and these huge colors, and it's a completely immersive experience, and you're just wow. And, I also compared it to the experience of going to a music festival, an electronic music festival, and the experience itself is just so beyond the normal scope of experience that it seems to be divine. And you obviously don't have to believe in God in order to have these experiences. I think the other side of the argument is that it is God, regardless of what you believe, that it is God. Yeah. And to which my answer is, how do you know? Which brings us back
like when Ken Ham made the argument, that is God. Like, the argument could be made, like, that's God reaching out and touching you and making you feel that at that moment.
Which I'm open to, but show me the evidence.
Right.
Show me how do you know that?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Yeah, because I think we all can say we've had some sort of higher experience, whether it be, like I said, I don't know the right word, if spiritual is the word.
There really is no right word. Because spiritual has been hijacked by the New Age community.
That's true.
Who is now talking about...
I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Well,
I hear that a lot.
It's not, but that's a valid statement.
Fair. That's true.
It's just New Age is something that they're kind of lumped together, and New Age and spirituality are different. New Age is kind of about taking effects from things that are based more in science and mathematics than the previous religions, but it's like Deepak Chopra, who talks about non-locality in quantum physics, about how a particle, contrary to what seems to make sense, we have scientific evidence to prove, or to prove that to prove that a particle can be in many places or in no place. It can pop in and out of existence, and it's not until you observe the reality, it's just a level of possibilities, and that doesn't have a real representation in our minds. So the fact that that's true, despite what we can think of, what does it mean that a particle can pop in and out of existence? Like, where does it go? What do you mean two places at once? And what do you mean when you look at it, or what is the observer? What is the reality? You may not understand all these things, which I'll is my later point that Deepak hopes. But if the evidence is there, then you're forced to conform your beliefs and your understandings to that reality. The fact is, a particle can exist in multiple places at once, or in 0 places at a given time, only to be one single particle in a single place upon its measurement. Whatever that means, I don't really fucking know. But that's a scientific reality. And so people in the New Age community will take not generalities, but little pieces of scientific truth and build a religion around it, and or a religious belief or understanding of things, and say that consciousness therefore is God, and that there's you can harness the power of God in the same way and it's just, I don't know what exactly he said. I'm not versed in his particular language of bullshit. But basically, he mixes up the non-locality thing with creating your own destiny, or creating your own reality consciously. But literally, thinking things into existence based, and I mean, we're not talking about just general positive thinking, which is again been tested and proven and things. He's talking about things that he just doesn't know, and oh my god, it's amazing. He is debating Michael Shermer and Sam Harris in one of these things, and he's talking about this thing. He's like, I challenge any theoretical physicist to come up here and validate what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. The scientist, and sure enough, not only a theoretical physicist, but the theoretical physicist, the guy who has written more than one book with Stephen Hawking, is in the audience.
Jeez. And
he's like, yeah, I just like to talk to you about this, whatever. And because Deepak Chopra also talks about infinity, and how he talks about the infinite being God, drawing that from infinity, the concept of never ending.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Which is something that exists in mathematics. I mean, it exists in. I mean, I know there's never trained in it, but calculus and further. It's not a number, but it's a concrete rational concept.
Yeah.
Or I mean, maybe it's not a rational concept, not in mathematical terms, but I mean.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, infinity is not a rational number in mathematical terms, but I mean the concept of infinity itself, of never endingness, is in and of itself a rational belief or a rational concept. And so this guy stands up in the audience and basically calls him out on his bullshit. And Deepak goes, let me ask you something. Do you work with the infinite? And the guy's like, well, I mean, infinity is part of work that I do, yeah. And he obviously not sure what to say, just such a stupid question. Yeah. And Deepak says, see? Yeah. Like, what? And goes on to make the point that the fact that there is such a concept, a man-made concept of infinity, whether or not it exists in reality is yet to be seen, but the concept itself was made up before any knowledge of the reality of and it's not anything that we could know. So yeah, it's a concept, but I mean, just like how things can be singular, but the number one is a human invention. Same thing. So in the same sense, the fact that we invented a word means that there is a God.
We invented a word.
Yeah, we invented a word for a concept of never-endingness, and that's his proof that there is some ultimate power.
There's so many things, and I mean, I definitely I'm kind of putting myself on the spot here, but there's, I'm sure, plenty of things we could think of that existed before we put a label on them that now are labeled, and I say label, but really I should say defined as infinity, for example. There's got to be other stuff that we only labeled in, recent history, meaning the past, however, a couple hundred years, whatever.
Well, I mean, think about DNA.
There you go. Okay, there you go.
DNA is something that
obviously that was there, but we didn't know what it was.
I mean, anything. Electricity was there.
Yeah.
We didn't know. But I mean, it's more about we didn't. I guess I see what you're saying. We didn't really have the concept of DNA. I mean, the concept of evolution came way before the actual conception of genetics itself.
Right. Yeah.
It was just that Darwin proposed that there was a process, but it's
talking about concepts with infinity.
Yeah. So the whole thing, because I mean, I say that I try not to because it is such a, and I don't know if you took this or were influenced by the Daniel Tosh stand-up routine where he says the same thing. He's like, in California, a lot of people will say, "I'm not religious, but I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual."
It's funny I hadn't seen that, but
he's like, "I'm not." It's like they'll be like, "I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual."
Yeah, I hear that.
I'm not honest, but you're interesting.
Yeah, right.
Right. And again, that's kind of what I think we're picking at and kind of picking apart.
Oh, so kind of opening up, yeah.
To realize that it really is. But yeah, I mean, I do say that I'm a very spiritual person, and if you had read Sam Harris Waking Up, he goes, Waking Up, Spirituality Without Religion is the sub. Yeah, but he goes in depth about, first he prefaces the whole book by making this difference between what he calls interchangeably spirituality or mysticism.
Oh, okay. All right. See, that those were the definitions I was trying to think of.
He talks about how he's going to use these words, and he knows that he's going to get hate from his pure atheist following, because it's going to be like, oh, what are you, again, we're talking
going soft on us, Sam.
Talking about bringing in beliefs. I have a couple of crystals up here that for a while I was brought to think or question or believe or whatever it is, that there was healing power in crystals, and that you have different crystals and different powers, and you charge them, and the moon cycles, and the this and the that, and the power and whatever. And it's based on, what a crystal is basically a perfect replication of, if you think about DNA as a self-replicating thing, there's mutations, which is how you get different species.
Yeah, right.
But a crystal is a perfect reproduction of a molecule.
Okay.
And so that's how you get giant crystals. They're all identical molecules. And so, that is in and of itself awe-inspiring. But,
it is, yeah.
But then to
kind of
extrapolate, even to extrapolate meaning from that, which is what the New Age community does, it takes that bit of science and says, okay, well now this has healing power and whatever.
It gets bastardized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why this well, no, religion, I'm spiritual, kind of has that connotation too. Because it's not about spirituality, it's about New Age, and there's a big difference. And for a long time I didn't understand the difference. I think one of the first things that really, really, really got me on the path to atheism, but more so, not even so much skepticism, but just open-minded
awareness,
just to possibilities, was the YouTube channel Spirit Science. I don't know.
No, I'm not familiar. No.
They have it's really cool. There's a lot of stuff that has to do with sacred geometry and.
I've heard. I know a very little bit about that stuff. Okay, yeah.
And there's a lot of cool stuff to unpack in there, but there's also a lot of beliefs held about these amazing facts, and you kind of have to take it all with a grain of salt, because it talks a lot about other dimensions and planes of consciousness, and it works in positive thinking and all that kind of stuff, and the nature or the elusive nature of consciousness and meditation and all of these practices that are legitimate and all these facts that are legitimate. And then there's some other stuff that's a little more out there.
A little harder to believe, you mean,
yes, harder to believe, but also farther, less based in science and
less credible. Okay, all right.
Where again, there is science in there, but what they're concluding is not necessarily science.
Okay.
And to be fair to the channel, they do a good job of putting a disclaimer that take it with a grain of salt, keep an open mind, But it's more about not closing your mind to it rather than not accepting it. You definitely have to take everything with a grain of salt. But it opened up a lot of what I understood about things I'd learned in school, in college, about consciousness and so on and so forth. Because, as a psychology major who took a lot of philosophy courses, I thought about those things, but not on a real personal level, only on a level
academic,
as much as I cared about the class, which at the time wasn't that much. So, I wasn't contemplating things. And that's where I get, that along with the Cartesian reductionism of Descartes, and I think therefore I am, and breaking down and saying we could believe nothing, it also extends to things that you believe that are not, and therefore to believe nothing also means to
exist. Okay.
Well, not only that, but to believe. No, not that's not what it means. But what I'm saying, what he's saying is that in order to think, you have to be there to think.
Right. Yeah.
So I think, therefore I am. Which, can be further reduced to, I think, therefore thoughts exist, because your thoughts may exist and you may not be real, because a TV character can have real thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
A TV character can think that they're real.
That's the example I
real,
needed. That's okay.
But anyway, no, my point is to say that if you don't believe anything, then you're open to accept anything.
Oh, okay, alright,
So anything that you would believe to assert that something is not true, you then have to question. So in order to say, that's crazy, you have to believe certain other things to compare it to.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to believe certain things about physics in order to believe that something can happen, based on what you believe, So because I think if I skipped that step and gone straight to the things that were more about being skeptical and critical and directly atheist, then I might have missed the spiritual side. And this is kind of jumping. I don't know if you have something to say about.
The only thing just on spirituality, I guess for me, spirituality, it's a lot more finite for me. Which is kind of ironic, having just had the whole conversation on infinite, but it's to me, it's just like some way there is a universe of good and not good and bad, but and I hate to just use a cliche like what goes around comes around and karma and stuff like that, because then that's a dangerous line to flirt with, But I do feel like there is some sort of. I don't think I could even say that, actually. I don't think I can. Because what I was going to say was I feel like there is sort of a what goes around comes around thing in the world, but then again...
I can speak to that.
Okay,
it's... on the goes around, the karma thing has to do with bringing it back to the crystals, because, I'm sure somebody listening will have their own crystals. I know a lot of people who share a lot of my beliefs and share a lot of interest in the same things, have their crystals and believe in them. And, again, that's fine. But I would ask those people what they know just about, how much they know about the psychology of, the mindfulness of positive thinking. And are you aware of any type of study with positive affirmations? If you tell yourself, if you, before you leave the house every day, you look in the mirror and you tell yourself, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, and I'm going to accomplish something today. Then that, whatever you want to call it, that energy, that karma, that whatever you want to call it, it's
vibe.
Yeah, that, exactly, will be more present in your mind.
Okay, that's what I thought you were
doing.
Okay. The expectations have changed.
Yeah.
Based on that.
So if you're, let's make it even simpler.
Yeah,
you look in the mirror and say, I will be happy today.
Okay.
That is not going to affect whether or not you get into a car accident on your way to work or not. That's just not, it has no effect.
No.
But if you didn't say that, you might, you probably do what most of us would do. You'd be fucking pissed off.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fucking bullshit. But maybe, if you, for long enough and with enough conviction, looked in that mirror and told yourself, I'm going to be happy today, to the point where it's just so present in your mind that you get in the accident, which was always going to happen regardless of what you said, which, again, could be, a whole other argument. But let's just assume that it's...
Right, all things being equal.
it's just going to be like, nope, I said I was going to be happy today.
Yeah.
This isn't the worst thing that can happen. Let me remind myself there's starving kids in Africa. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so, if you understand that is a phenomenon of human psychology, the brain just works that way.
Yeah. Yep.
Then you could be somebody who doesn't say that to themselves in the mirror every day. You go out, you buy a crystal, and now every time you look at it, you think, oh, I got the crystal, I'm going to be happy now. You're performing psychologically the exact same function as just saying it in the mirror.
Yeah.
So, what does that mean? That means that there is something there to harness. To say that, the recency of positive thoughts will have an effect, whatever it is. It's something that can be substantiated, something that can be tested and whatever. And to just say generally that crystals have healing powers, but there's no rhyme or reason to what will or will not work, or whatever, it's useless in the grander conversation about what is and what is not. And like I said before, discounting all spirituality in that conversation is a disservice to all parties involved, I think. But I still think that is the main question. What is and what is not? I mean, is the power of crystals real or is it not? That is a question that has an answer.
Yeah.
And
as of right now, it's just what we manifest out of it,
As of right now, we have no evidence
to
support the claim. I don't want to say no evidence, but not strong enough evidence for me. I mean, there's evidence there if you want to connect the dots. There's enough scientific ignorance to hold studies, and in the same way we would conduct anything else, and produce evidence. But then, again, you have to talk about the validity of your study, the intellectual honesty. There's bad scientific studies out there every goddamn day. That doesn't, and again, that's not...
Just because it's science doesn't mean it's right or good.
Yeah, that's not when we say science. We're not including every single action of using the process of science.
Right.
We're saying the greater achievements, I think, of the human endeavor to use the process in general.
There you go, yeah.
I mean, there's bombs and weapons and biological shit, and there's tons of bad things that can come from using scientific procedures. And again, we've made the argument that moral true north doesn't exist anyway. So there's nothing in science that says whether or not to cause suffering or to not cause suffering. I mean, I think to be a scientist, I think in many areas, I think it is part of that specific area not to create unnecessary harm, but just not to be an official scientist, but simply science itself, the concept, the process of science.
Yeah, just quickly as an aside for that, just because you said about morality, we don't want to cause suffering, and so that's kind of our basis for it. We, watched something with Sam Harris recently, and it was either his free will lecture or one of his debates on morality or something, and he said, why can't morality come from our pain sensors? Like, I don't want to hit you on the arm because I know it's going to hurt you. That could be my moral basis. But then, of course, there's a lot of things that might not be necessarily connected to physical pain. But then you can, I guess, make the argument, well, there's emotional pain and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's where it comes from. It develops along with the complexity of humans, and eventually in human history becomes a scenario in which I would want to hit you, even though I know and it would serve a social purpose.
Okay, all right.
I mean, you talk about a child, and your own child, and you don't have the psychological knowledge that we have now, or the linguistic skills to explain to a child why they can't do certain things, or you don't have the proper restraints, or whatever the case is, and you need to hit the child. I mean, in today's world, that's not the case, because we do have the tools that we have, but maybe talking about evolutionarily, a million years ago, you can't necessarily blame. A lot of times we don't blame people for hitting their kids today because they don't have a better option. So you talk about evolutionarily, it may not have been even possible to control a person, a child, or whatever, a subordinate,
right,
without hitting them. without causing pain. So that, I mean...
So does that conditioning then, millions of years ago, become part of those origins of the moral basis, you know? That's what's so fascinating to me.
As it becomes more complex, and so, okay, maybe now we move forward, and yes, sometimes you need to hit the kid to tell them certain things, but you realize that if you just show them certain things in this, and it evolves with us. And
right.
I mean...
Agreed 100% on that.
And even in today's world, I'll try to do this without going on another tangent, but I used to / currently consider myself a pacifist.
Okay.
But it's more of a general term. I don't believe necessarily in the ultimate claim that violence is never the answer. I just personally in my own life, I don't think that violence is I just don't believe that violence is the answer when there is no other answer.
Okay, so, yeah, I think we can probably fall in the same spot on the spectrum with that.
And I only make this disclaimer because of the point about pacifism that Sam Harris made in one of these books about how if somebody's raping a little girl and you won't hit them to stop them, then that's a moral fallacy.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay,
so pacifism, even broader, you're talking about, you see the Holocaust going on and you can stop it by hitting one person in the head or something, and you won't do it, then so obviously to that extreme, I'm not a pacifist.
That really opens another book that we gotta save that because man, because that means there was a person that you could make the argument the people in Germany, because you said you brought up the Holocaust with Hitler. There were however many people there were in Germany at the time, I don't know the exact number, and one of those people could have assassinated Hitler and the Holocaust could have never happened. So that kind of speaks to what you said, is hitting the person who's raping the girl moral or not, because you're causing the rapist pain, but you're ultimately doing good, in my opinion.
The fact is there was a first time that simply it wasn't an issue before. It just had never happened. There was a first time it happened.
That's fascinating to me, man.
And so at that point, then there is a human need to evolve our belief, if you want to call it that, about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate in terms of hitting other people, and it evolves. You get to today where you really shouldn't need to be violent with anyone unless they're fucking religious extremists, and there's no fucking other way. There's no reason. There's no reasoning with them. Because that's the other thing. It's as a Bernie Sanders supporter, hippie of sorts, you would think that if you talk about war in the Middle East and whatever, that I would be completely against military action, and I'm certainly not prepared to say that. Which my dad certainly thinks that is my stance, and that you either think that we George Bush Republican style all in boots on the ground or nothing. I mean, I obviously did not subscribe to that false dichotomy.
No.
And I would love for there to be a nonviolent solution, but given the nature of what these people are doing and the extent that it's spreading and all of these things, without the real knowledge, without knowing the people, without knowing the situation, without knowing the extent of what the military can and cannot do and what our diplomats can and cannot do, it stands to reason that we probably can't resolve this without violence. People are probably going to have to die because there's no convincing somebody who believes ultimately what they're saying. And when they say that they have the truth of God, there is what argument can you have?
Yeah, nothing's gonna suffice to that person. And so
we probably do need to have extensive air raids and bombs and people dying and whatever. But that is certainly not how I approach my daily personal life. And it's just that simple. It's that I've developed a differentiation between the situations. I have a more complex Rolodex of scenarios. It's not just, do we kill them? We don't kill them.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so hard, though, are those cards in your Rolodex? Who is it? What are the circumstances? The external circumstances, outside pressures, shit like that. How do we base what we do off of what somebody else believes when we don't even, and I say we, I think I'm speaking more nationally now, how do we as a nation decide what we're going to do to somebody else if we don't even believe, and for that matter, detest what they do believe? It's kind of like, I don't know the right word to describe what that paradigm is, but, well, it is paradoxical, I guess.
And bring it back to the average person. That is your role, because now you have all these terrorist things going on, terrorist attack, and our president won't say that it's Islam.
Right.
As if it's just, he says it's a problem of fundamental extremism. As if there's people of all different beliefs killing people because they believe what they believe so extremely.
Now, do you think that's just a safe way to say it? Do you think
well, absolutely, because he's not trying to offend people.
Right.
And which is, I mean, okay, great, you're trying to be sensitive, but at what, being sensitive is one thing, but you don't be sensitive just for the sake of being sensitive. You be sensitive because there's no need to cause suffering to people unnecessarily. I mean,
very fair.
But if the truth, which needs to be said, is going to cause suffering, you can't not say it just because it's going to cause suffering. If it's causing greater suffering, not to say it.
There we go. Okay. All right.
Because now we're talking about, you're trying to, don't want to hurt people's feelings, but you don't mind that they get blown up. I mean, like...
Yeah, okay, there you go. So I guess maybe you could say that's how we make those decisions, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, if we, as a nation, weren't offended by religion being talked about or thought about critically, then we wouldn't have that problem. We could call it Islamic terrorism.
We could call it as we see it. It could be so much more productive.
And react to reality and not to our ideals.
Yes.
I think it's important to have ideals and then relay them to the reality that we live in.
Absolutely.
I mean, some people, I think of myself as an idealist in the sense that I have ideals. But I think the other sense of being an idealist is acting as if the world is as are your beliefs or your ideals. In that you want the world to be a peaceful place, so you act always as if the world is a peaceful place, even if it's not a peaceful place. I mean, that's all well and good to say if the world were a peaceful place, I would do this, that, and the other. But the world's not a peaceful place, so it doesn't have any bearing. I mean, that's a wonderful conversation to have, and I would love to have that conversation. But that doesn't help that's not a political conversation. That's not a conversation for the leader of a country who is at least thinks themselves to be the leaders of the world, who are in the midst of crisis of this sort. I don't think unilateral military action from the United States is the answer. But if we stop the conversation in order to be sensitive to people's feelings, and we have to just say war or no war, and that's as much conversation as we can have about it, then, I mean, I guess the answer has to be war, but, like, why do we have to make it like that? We are an advanced, civilized society. I mean, if not, certainly not, but we, people like to think of America as number one.
Yeah.
You want to be the number one leading society in the world, and you're stuck in the first century. Yeah,
I mean, we're speaking of the leader of the free world, not even using his own freedom of speech now. Talk about a paradox. Yeah. So I guess that brings it full circle again to more just the there we go. Mode of thinking and basically where we're coming from with this is we do need to realize that defining certain things isn't a bad thing. Me and you specifically, personally, did not make up something about Islam being a violent religion. We didn't make that up. That's just how it is. Like if I'm using jihadists, right? That's the right term.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. All right. So I guess my point is, if we were able to not be so sensitive to it and realize that, no, that's just the reality. Islam is just a violent religion. We could probably be more productive in our foreign affairs. You know what I mean?
I don't know. And again, I think it's, this is the conversation that needs to be had. But I don't know if it's that, because, we were talking before about the quote that Islam is a religion of peace. And to say that it's not. It's just not, that the fundamentalists are the one who are sticking to the book. Maybe it is. Maybe it is that Islam is a religion of peace, but the Quran is not a book of peace.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm willing to take that distinction because the Bible is not a book of peace, but today's Christianity, by and large, well, I don't know if you can say by and large, but
in my experience, I know I can say.
Certainly in my experience, and I think in the average Christian's interpretation, whether it's about bringing peace, and I think they're deluded into disrupting peace in the name of peace, ironically. If it is that it's the Quran and not necessarily Islam, that was just whatever. But again, that conversation needs to be had so that we can. Right. So if we are wrong in saying that Islam is not a religion of peace, and Islam is in fact a religion of peace, but it's just the Quran is a violent book. Okay, fine. I'm willing to, if that's the way it is, let's call it like it is.
Exactly.
And fine.
Exactly.
We can have Islam, but you can't have people who read the Quran in a fundamental way that it is the Word of God, as dictated to Muhammad. Just that is not okay. And I mean, we're kind of hitting the time limit here, but again, we're getting kind of far away from the average person, which I'm always trying to tie this in. I think it's important to realize that, as I said it's important to realize, even if you're not interested in seeking enlightenment or indulging in spirituality or, sitting and meditating, whatever the case may be, that you are interested in those spiritual experiences. If you are a surfer, you're probably a surfer because when you're out surfing, you feel a certain way. If you're a singer, when you're on stage, if you're
the music.
Yeah, whatever it is that you do, you probably do it because you have a spiritual connection to it. Whatever it is.
Okay.
And again, this is an entire.
I was going to say we can do this. Yeah. You read my mind there.
I mean, that's why I think we need to put off free will for a couple more episodes because there's still more ground to be covered, I think.
Yeah. And more things to develop on our own personal levels for the listeners.
And
just as an aside, sorry.
I think we're probably going to go towards consciousness next, because I think if you explain a lot of things about consciousness, you understand the nature of what this spirituality that we're talking about is, and how encompassing it is for all that you're looking for in religion. All the things that you want and you think that you'd be missing without religion are still there and are in fact exactly always as they were.
Yeah.
You're just letting go of the things that you already don't like and just kind of changing your language a little bit. You're not actually really at the acceptance of it. You're not really changing anything that you believe. You're just accepting to look at things now in a new way. And certain things that you believe about humanity and about, the goodness of certain experiences, those will never change. Well, they might change, but I mean, they don't have to change.
Yeah.
And the larger point though is that if you understand that it's not just singing or dancing or surfing or playing music or whatever it is, it's not just that produces that. You don't have to get on stage in order to do that. If you do, great. I'm not saying don't get on stage, but I'm saying if you're not on stage, then you're still, that state of being is still available to you. And once you realize that, then it just absolutely changes your entire perspective. It changes your behavior. It changes your goals.
Nobody got time for that.
We don't. And I mean, I'll end on something again from Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, is that I'm not here to convince you that your job is not important or that it's not important to have a house and feed yourself, clothe your kids and things like that. But it is important to realize that any job that you get, any task you embark on, anything, really at the heart of it, what you're trying to do is create a present in which you can be happy. You're trying to get a job so that at a certain point, either doing that job or making having a certain amount of money or a certain whatever it is that you can finally be like, I'm happy.
Yeah, I've arrived.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we realize that that destination is not really a destination as much it simply is just a state of being. In the same way, you get hungry, you get happy, you fall in love. Certain things are more powerful and more grounded in the real world, and some things are more grounded in your
human experience.
Yeah, the way you're thinking or the way you're experiencing or whatever it is. But it's all about the present moment. And with that being said, I guess that gives us an overview of what we're all about here at AweReally. So stay tuned for next month. We'll probably be talking about the nature of consciousness and things like that.
It's going to be a good one.
In the meantime, definitely follow us on Twitter at AweReallyDudes. That's AWEREALLY Dudes, DUDES. SoundCloud is probably the best place to hear this for now until we're on iTunes. It's going to be soundcloud.com/AweReally. New information about our podcasts, our information, our sources, questions we might bring up, anything like that. A lot of cool stuff is going to be on our Facebook. You can also search facebook.com/AweReallyPodcast. If you have any tips, if you have any questions, if you want to talk shit, feel free.
Bring it on.
Bring it on, yeah.
We invite it. We welcome it.
And if you're too scared to do that in public and you want to do it private, AweReallyPodcast@gmail.com. We will check it all. We will be there. And we will see you next month, guys.
Believe nothing except what's making